I shot 316 customers in 3 days, endured a shoes and pizza spit attack, then turned stolen gear into a thriving business. This incident transpired 12 years ago, and I continue to enjoy the benefits to this day. I was employed by the company, which specialized in three-phase photography, focusing on family and child portraits. They did not engage in weddings, events, or any similar activities. All work was conducted in a mobile studio setting. Sessions were scheduled for just 10 minutes, and we were expected to photograph between 30 to 50 clients daily. Yes, it was as dreadful as it sounds. The work was swift, high energy, and at times simply exhausting. 1. The preseller they would arrive 2 to 3 weeks prior to sell a special 10 by 13 portrait and set appointments. 2. The photographer, which refers to me in this context, would come in for around a week to capture the images. 3. The salesperson would revisit 2 weeks later with the special offer along with the additional 6 poses I had taken to try to sell around $400 worth of photographs. I excelled at my job. The company's average sales volume was $100 per customer based on 50 customers. The more you shot, the more your quality dropped, as you spent less time focusing on the finer details. Those details are what sell prints. My average was approximately $175 per 150 to 200 clients. I was generating substantial profits for the company, yet they continually treated me poorly. Oh, the stories. Their business model revolved around shooting as many sessions as possible as quickly as feasible. For them, completing 50 sessions with a $100 average was preferred over 35 sessions at a $150 average, even though the profit margin was identical. I consistently disagreed with this view, and my manager and I would argue about it weekly. They withheld raises because I did not have enough sessions and took away my bonuses for not meeting their targets. So I figured out how to be quick, efficient, and exceptionally good. That's a topic for another post. Now for the interesting part, enter the jerk. This individual was a preseller who deceived clients, misled the store, and scheduled appointments from 9 in the morning until 8:30 in the evening, despite the studio's operating hours being 10 in the morning to 7 in the evening. He spun every tale imaginable and perhaps invented a few of his own. Want to bring your dog? Family of 15. Sure, bring 5 outfits and I'll even arrange her makeup for you. I don't even wear makeup myself. Come have your picture taken and we will throw in a complimentary toaster. To make matters worse, he would triple and quadruple book appointments, and when he exhausted those, he would sell open slots, advising clients to simply come in, anytime, and my photographer will fit you in. Just writing that infuriates me even after all these years. The major issue was that he would waive the sitting fee or simply fail to mention it. I was required to collect that $8 charge. Each time I failed to do so, it was deducted from my paycheck. It was an absolute nightmare. I refused to work in the same capacity as the jerk for these and 1,000 other reasons. I informed my boss that if they ever assign me to work behind the jerk again, I would resign. That's precisely what transpired. They were aware he had been at the store where I was assigned and chose to lie about it. I promptly contacted my boss and informed him that this would be my final week and that he needed to arrange to collect the photography equipment at the end of the shoot. I should have walked out immediately, but I was young and naive. It was a 3-day shoot, and I individually photographed 316 clients. That is an outrageous number of sessions, and nobody was pleased. Each evening, the store manager had to instruct my clients to leave as the store was closing. Clients lined up at 9 in the morning awaiting my arrival. I endured so much mistreatment during that week. After one client threw a shoe at me and another spat on my pizza, the store security guard brought over a chair and stayed with me nearly the entire time. I honestly can't recall how many individuals were escorted out of the store for inappropriate behavior in my studio. Even after more than a decade, I still have nightmares about that week. However, when it came time to retrieve the equipment, no one showed up, so I began making phone calls and planning my next moves. Me, what would you like me to do with your equipment? Boss, you will need it next week in Florida. Me, no, as I have resigned. Boss, you did not provide any notice, so I cannot accept your resignation. I am sending you to Florida next week. Me, I am an independent contractor. Remember, you cannot compel me to go to Florida. This is straightforward. I resigned. That's another story. Boss, just go to Florida. I do not have time for this right now. You can quit in 3 weeks if you hire a replacement. And then he ended the call. Not going to Florida. I packed up the equipment and took it home with me. The camera was a brand new Canon T2i 550D, which was quite valuable back in 2010. I really did not want to part with it, but it was not mine to keep. I had a plan. My boss was a complete disaster of a human being. If he could avoid something, he would. If he could shift responsibility to someone else, he would do that as well. I decided to use his most detrimental traits against him: avoidance and procrastination. The next step I took was to use the company credit card to rent the nearest climate-controlled storage unit. I paid for the first month, just that one. I stored everything there, right down to the last halogen bulb. I took meticulous photos and created an inventory. After locking the door, I walked away. At this point, all I could do was wait and hope my boss would continue to be the inept individual I knew him to be. Next, I called and reported the credit card stolen. Why? Because I realized that if I didn't, the card would remain active and rent would be paid every month, and that was not acceptable to me. I cut the card in half, sent it along with the storage locker combination to my boss via FedEx, along with a hand-painted sign that read, "I quit." I also emailed Human Resources to inform them of my contract termination and that my boss had the information regarding the equipment. This was likely the only questionable action I took. The person I emailed was on medical leave, and I was aware of this. I could have sent the email to several other employees, but they might have actually responded. By the time she returned to the office, she was so inundated with emails that she wouldn't even know where to begin. A month passed, and then the police knocked on my door. I certainly wasn't expecting that. The company had reported the equipment stolen, and the police were there to investigate. I genuinely thought I would end up in jail. The officer who knocked on my door anticipated taking me away in handcuffs until I clarified the situation. I ended up taking copies of my emails to the police station, along with my storage unit contract and the shipping label. Both my name and the company were listed on that contract. I had to provide an official statement and complete some paperwork. The company placed a monetary value of $12,000 on the studio rig, so technically, I was in considerable trouble. But I had protected myself well. The police informed me I was in the clear, as the storage unit contract was in their name, their credit card covered the payment, and I had sent all the relevant information to the company. I am quite adept at covering my own bases. At that stage, I figured the situation was over because they would surely retrieve the rig or send someone to do so. Nope, my boss continued to be worthless. 2 more months passed. I received a call from the storage facility informing me they were about to cut the lock and auction the contents. I almost couldn't contain my excitement. I called my boss again, but he avoided my calls and overlooked my emails requesting an immediate response. I never specified the purpose of my calls, and as I had hoped, he ignored me. All right then, I had done all I could. That's when everything began to fall into place. Then I encountered a significant obstacle, but ultimately it worked out better in the long run. In this state, an owner cannot bid at their storage auction. I was unaware of this rule. However, where there is a will, there is a way. They sent several letters and called 3 more times before setting the auction date. The unit was scheduled to be auctioned on my birthday. My neighbor attended the sale. He purchased the unit for $125. I was elated. Naturally, we agreed to cooperate on this, but we needed to maintain the appearance that we were not associated. The pistol grip for the camera cost more than that, not to mention the lighting, props, and costumes. And of course, the camera. My neighbor then placed an advertisement in the local newspaper for photography items $1,000 firm, without detailing any specifics, and oops. He mistakenly listed the wrong phone number. A week later, he wished to clear out his garage, so he sold the unit back to me for $126. He has a bill of sale from the auction, and I have a bill of sale from him. It is now mine, and there is nothing that the company can do about it, but they attempted to. I now have a fully operational photography studio, all the contacts needed to launch my own business, and the skills to execute it. I began contacting all the stores I worked with over the last 8 years, offering them a significantly better deal than what the company had. I handled my own pre-selling, photography, and sales. However, I went a step further. I purchased a monitor and computer, allowing clients to view their images and place orders on the day of the shoot. They paid in full, and I mailed the photos directly to them. Customers adored it. There were no high-pressure sales tactics and no tricks. My clients were satisfied, and so were the stores. About 6 months after my first independent shoot, I heard from the company. I received several unpleasant letters from them, which I chose to ignore. Word had circulated that I was utilizing their equipment and working with someone else. I simply laughed at them. They thought so little of me that it never crossed their minds that I was operating my own business. Then I received an angry legal letter from a lawyer. It began with a cease and desist order, escalated to accusations of violating the non-compete agreement, and ended with a demand for the return of their property. Apparently, they hadn't provided him with all the facts. I shared copies of everything with him. After waiting a few weeks for his response and hearing nothing, I made the call to inquire about the status, but no one was available to answer. How convenient. A few days later, I received a certified letter notifying me that no further legal action will be pursued from this office. I would have been content to let the whole matter fade away, but this entire episode irritated me, and now I sought retribution. I made a dedicated effort to significantly impact them. Gradually, I built my business and my reputation. I did not resort to any of the vile tactics that the jerk employed. Within a year, stores and schools began reaching out to me. I acquired more work than I could manage alone, requiring me to hire a second photographer, then a third. Ultimately, I hired 4 individuals, drawing them away from the company's grasp. At my business's peak, I managed 8 additional photographers and a full-time office assistant. While I could have expanded even further, in hindsight, I am grateful for my restraint. The advent of digital photography revolutionized the industry, and then it led to unforeseen consequences. I found my niche just as the market boomed. I effectively drove the company out of 3 states. They lost all their chain contracts to me, including the store where my problems initially arose. The jerk lost all his stores and ended up working at a gas station. My boss faced demotion because his district was dissolved when I seized the contracts. The jerk even attempted to persuade one of my photographers to hire him for pre-selling duties. By this time, my name and business had gained an excellent reputation. My boss left the company for good and used me as a personal reference. He was an excellent photographer, just a dreadful manager. And I relished the opportunity to inform the people who called me that I was legally prohibited from expressing my true opinions of him. The rise of the cell phone camera essentially dismantled traditional photography, leading me to close my business in late 2017. The company shut its doors for good in 2016, and I like to think my actions contributed to that outcome. I remain operational while they are nothing more than an abandoned establishment. I still possess the original rig, although the camera has been replaced multiple times. I now do senior portraits and the occasional venue shoot. Most of my photography is for restaurant menus. When people ask me if that is boring, I reply that I've never encountered a meatball that screamed, cried, or kicked me, which is a regular occurrence when working with children. This may not be the most grandiose tale, yet I triumphed at their own game, and that satisfaction still feels incredibly rewarding. Story 2. I cut off my dad after his history-revising letter. No apology for past pain, just unacknowledged emotional abuse and manipulation. My father sent me a letter after I severed ties with him definitively, and it is filled with alternative narratives. I am hesitant to reply, and I also worry about his potential reaction if I choose not to. Since reaching adulthood, I have grappled with how my biological father fits into my life. Our morals, ethics, and values differ significantly. I finally invited him to join me for therapy last year, and things seemed to be improving. We began to tackle issues related to boundaries, communication, and mutual respect. I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism, while he was diagnosed as a sociopath during my teenage years. In our therapy sessions, we had an assignment to dine out together for the second time. I arrived at the restaurant at the agreed-upon time and called him to inform him of my arrival. He informed me that he was grocery shopping for a new refrigerator. There was no prior text or phone call, nothing at all. It was rush hour, and I only had a 2-hour window to meet him. He assured me that he would soon be on his way. After waiting 45 minutes, I opted to close my tab and take my food to go. This happened in October 2024. During the next therapy session, he raised his voice, dismissing my feelings as nonsense, and rolling his eyes at me. I ended up leaving the session feeling overwhelmed with guilt and sadness in the aftermath. In January 2025, he sent me the following letter. Typos included November 18, 2020 for my dearest full name, nickname. When you were born, your mother and I were overjoyed. After years of trying without success to conceive, we had finally given up. You were a blessing. Our Lord could not prepare us for what lay ahead. You were born with a cleft palate, which presented many challenges. We had to learn how to feed you since you could not suck milk from a bottle. We purchased squeezable bottles and created a larger hole in the nipple to squeeze enough milk into your mouth. This worked fairly well, but you also swallowed a lot of air, causing you gas pains. Fortunately, your mother worked nights and I worked days, which meant you were always cared for. So many worries and memories. November 20, 2024, I have prayed to God about how to begin this next chapter. You have chosen to reject me, my dear, and the love I have for you. However, you can never diminish the love I hold for you, which will always remain. Our relationship during your childhood was filled with awe and joy. Our first connection happened before your birth. Your mother and I were in the living room, and you became very active inside her. I reached out and placed my hand on her belly, and you traced the outline of my hand with your little hand. The feeling was indescribable. I knew you were reaching out to me. After you were born, during the many times you had colic, I would lay you on my stomach and sing to you. You always found the sound of my voice comforting, and you would fall asleep, making me feel blessed. December 1st. It has been a while since my last visit. So much has kept me busy. I apologize. I remember the first time you walked towards me. You crawled to the end of the coffee table and used it to pull yourself up. You were only about 2.5 feet away from me. I extended my arms towards you, encouraging you, and you squealed with delight as you walked into my embrace. I felt immense pride for you. I recall how you and childhood dog played on the floor together. He was so protective of you. When I would blow raspberries on your stomach, causing you to giggle, he would become a bit upset until he realized it was all in good fun. We often took walks to the park, with you in the stroller. I once carried you to the top of a half-round climber made of 1-inch tubing, and childhood dog climbed up to join us. That was the day we discovered that Snuffy was a climber. As a toddler, you and I shared many happy moments. However, as you grew older, things began to shift. Do you recall my aquariums? We would buy cooked popcorn shrimp and feed my largest fish together. We even ate some shrimp ourselves. But then, you stopped eating shrimp after your mother told you they were the cockroaches of the ocean. She must have taught you about cockroaches as well. There was also the time I went hunting with your uncle Name and my friend Name, and your mother informed you that I was going to kill Rudolph's father. After that, you refused to eat anything that contained bones. I cherish the memories of your preschool days. I still have the Best Dad award you made for me. You were so proud when you graduated. Based on the progress reports from your teachers, you were among the brightest in the class. I have always been proud of your achievements. As you matured, I was fascinated by how efficiently you dealt with your physical disability challenges. Being a man of faith, I sensed it was time to introduce you to my Lord Jesus as you began to grow up. We have discussed this, so I will say no more. During your pre-teen or early teen years, as your body began to develop, there were moments when boys around you were unkind. With your physical disability, you understandably felt insecure. Our solution was to enroll in martial arts together. I found a sensei who would help you overcome your insecurities, and we began training together. I have fond memories of us practicing our forms together, even with the Pong staffs. During this time, my PTSD was severe, and I returned to therapy as I struggled with a declining career due to my health issues. I often wonder where I found the energy to finish the basement, then the bathroom, and finally the kitchen. During this period, your mother and I began to drift apart, but I never understood why. I always gave her my love. Yet in the final 5 years of our marriage, she threatened divorce 3 times, and on the 4th occasion, I simply said, "Do your worst." We've already discussed this, so I won't elaborate further. December 23, 2004, I apologize for how long this has taken. I find that the intensity of my pain significantly influences what I can achieve each day. Opening my heart to you has been an emotional roller coaster, and sometimes I need to take a step back. After your mother and I separated, you fell into a deep depression. Despite living 60 miles away, I made efforts to show you how much I loved you at least every other day. I noticed how profoundly sad you were, particularly in your academic performance. We discussed the situation and agreed you needed motivation. I promised that if you graduated with a B+ or better, I would get you a car for your graduation. I have always supported you and given you as much love as I could. My love for you is immeasurable, and that will never change. You may choose to exclude me from your life, but my love for you will never cease. During your teenage years and afterward, I noticed a change in your attitude. You frequently took my words out of context, distorted what I said, and reacted emotionally. I apologize for not being more diplomatic. Honesty was the only thing I was ever taught. Regarding your professional achievements, I am exceptionally proud. However, when it comes to your personal life, I cannot embrace the path you have chosen. The way you refer to being gender non-conforming seems to align too closely with the current, woke, ideology. I have consistently held my beliefs regarding your sexual preference. Ultimately, it is your life and your choices. I will not condone living in sin. That choice is between you and the God who created you. With regard to your heightened sensitivity, I do not need to affirm your emotions. It is essential that you learn to manage them. Moving forward, I will refrain from contacting you because that would only serve to anger you. My heart, my door, and my life are always open to you because I love you more than you may hate me. The letter concludes abruptly, lacking a closing or a signature. It is noteworthy that my birthday fell within the time frame of his letter, yet he did not once take a moment to wish me a happy birthday. There is no apology for his failure to communicate with me that day. No acceptance of responsibility, just an extensive revision of events that nearly worked until he stated that he did not need to validate my emotions. I have since learned from various individuals in his life that he was never faithful to my mother, that he wanted her to terminate her pregnancy, and that he likely was responsible for the death of my childhood dog. So, dear reader, how do you suggest I respond? I am seeking validation for my heightened sensitivity. Throughout the years, I have continually placed myself in the path of his emotional abuse, holding out hope that he could be a better person or that my relationship as his daughter could change him. However, I have finally put an end to that cycle.